particularly glaring example of this is the question of taxes, which of course is a key element in government operations. I have to say here to my fellow Austrians, the Austrians have been very weak on tax theory also. They really have very little to say about theory of taxes. And as a matter of fact, this is true for limited government types in general, I must say. If a limited government person favors taxes, which most of them do, I'm exempting objectivists in this discussion, but most limited government people, of course, favor taxes. The other question is, how do you raise the taxes, and which taxes, and so forth and so on. And what are the justifications of this or that, and it gets pretty dicey. Well, usually the Austrian position on taxes is they like to have a lower tax structure as possible, which I go along with. And two, that it should not be progressive. The income taxes should not be progressive, for example. And three, they should somehow be neutral with respect to the market, which is of course really impossible. But this is just about as far as Austrians will go in a tax theory. But at least most Austrians aren't really enamored of taxes. They don't consider taxes somehow a lovable instrument. Whereas Chicagoites really do, once they get around to the doctrine that taxes are really more efficient in this particular area. So if you turn to the Chicago writings on taxation, there's a big yen for taxes in many ways. For example, I remember a few years ago there was a meeting of the Panorama Society, which is a group of international free market, semi-free market, and one-tenth free market economists and social philosophers and journalists and businessmen. And they gather every year at the Pleasant Summer Resort. And one year, 3 Chicagoans zeroed in on Belgium or wherever the meeting was held. And 3 of them had independently arrived at this magnificent theory of a new kind of tax. I don't know if they've ever published this, but at any rate, they arrived at this, and it was all great minds, working independently on a problem, will arrive at the same solution. They arrived at this, and the tax went as follows. And this, I think, is sort of indicative of the Chicagoite mentality and Chicagoite attitude toward property in general. It went something like this. Here's what we do. We get everybody to assess his own property. In other words, I have a set of books, or you have a house, or a factory, or whatever it is. Each guy puts down his own assessment. Well, it sounds pretty good, because if each guy is allowed to put his own assessment down on any kind of Gestapo investigation, the usual, of course, temptation to put out a valuation of something like half a penny. Then you pay your rate on it. But there's a clinker here, which Chicago people worked out. If you are forced by the government to sell this particular property to anybody who comes along at that rate. So they really lapped this up. They really thought this was somehow the answer to the tax question. He is more efficient. You don't have to have a big arm of assessors investigating what your property really is. You let the guy assess it himself, and then whatever schmo down the block comes along and says, okay, you say your house is worth half a cent, here's a half a penny, and you're forced to sell it to him that way. And at this meeting, Paul Friedrich Hayek, a distinguished free market Austrian economist, was very concerned about this. Particularly, he has a distinguished book collection, and he said, "Well, my God, this means that if I value the books, my books, at the going price, let's say, this means that I would be forced to sell it to anybody. And this means, of course, if I value the book very highly, I have to put an enormous assessment on it. So in other words, especially if you know some people have to get you, they want to destroy your book. You have to put an assessment of $10 billion in your book collection, which means you have to pay $100,000 a year or whatever the property tax will be, which you might not have. So of course the Chicago answer, what about my books? Hayek said, and the Chicago answer was, "It's tough on your books." I think this really sums up the Chicago position on taxes. It's a position of brutal indifference to genuine property right, and a desire to clean up the state. In other words, make the state as efficient as possible.